What if I told you there's a financial tool so powerful it can both stabilize the global economy and, bring it to the brink of collapse? Well, today we're going to demystify that very thing: derivatives.
It all comes down to a problem that literally every single business on the planet has to deal with. How on earth do you manage unpredictable financial risk?
Okay, just imagine for a second that you're running a business. You're constantly navigating this sea of uncertainty. Are your sales going to be up or down? What's the cost of your materials going to be next month? All this financial risk, from interest rates to currency swings, it can be absolutely paralyzing.
So to solve this exact problem, the financial world came up with a special tool called a derivative. And hey, don't let that name intimidate you. At its heart, it's really just a contract whose value is derived from the future price of something else.
Okay, so what's really going on inside one of these powerful contracts? Let's break it down.
If you strip away all the complicated jargon, you're left with a surprisingly simple agreement. It's got three basic parts. First, you've got two parties, a buyer and a seller, making the deal. Second, you've got the underlying. That's just the thing they're making the deal about. Could be oil, gold, a stock, whatever. And finally, every single derivative has a shelf life. It has an expiration date. And this is the most important thing to get. Derivatives don't just create brand new risk out of thin air. Nope. They're really just a mechanism to move existing risk from someone who doesn't want it to someone else who's willing to take it on, usually because they see a chance to make a profit.
Okay, so what are the actual moves people make with these contracts? Well, it really just boils down to three main strategies, three key plays in the game.
First up, you've got hedging. Think of this as playing defense. Remember our airline from the beginning? This is exactly what they're doing. They lock in a fuel price today so they're protected if prices spike tomorrow. It's basically an insurance policy against bad price moves.
Then you have speculation, which is the complete opposite. This is all about playing offense. A speculator is using derivatives to make a big bet on which way a price is going to go. They're hoping to score a massive profit. And because of how these contracts work, the potential gains can be huge. But, and this is a big but, so can the losses. And number 3 is arbitrage. Now, the folks who do this, arbitragers, they're kind of like financial detectives. Their whole job is to hunt for tiny little pricing mistakes between different markets. And when they find one, they use derivatives to swoop in and lock in a small, basically risk-free profit before anyone else notices and the market corrects itself.
All right, so now that we've got the what and the why, let's talk about the how big. And I really need you to prepare yourself for this, because the scale of this market is, well, it's truly mind-boggling. It's almost unbelievable.
Get this, the total notional value of these contracts floating around out there has been estimated at over $700 trillion. Just let that sink in for a second. That number is so astronomically large, it's hard to even comprehend. It totally dwarfs the entire global economy by a lot. But okay, here's a super important distinction we have to make. That $700 trillion figure, that's what's called the notional value. Think of it as a reference number. It's the face value of the contracts, but it's not the actual amount of money at risk. The real cash on the line, what we call the market value, is a lot less, closer to $19 trillion. Now, don't get me wrong, that is still an absolutely massive, enormous number, and that's the figure that represents the real financial exposure.
So you've got this immense scale, right? And you combine that with incredible complexity. Well, that means that when things go wrong, they can go catastrophically wrong. And that, of course, brings us to the dark side of this story, the 2008 global financial crisis.
This timeline here is a perfect storm. It shows exactly how a useful tool can turn into a weapon of financial destruction. So it all kicked off in the 2000s with a huge U.S. housing boom, right? Low interest rates made it easy to get a mortgage. Then, Wall Street started bundling all these mortgages, even the really risky ones, together and selling them as these complex packages. And here's where derivatives came in. They created something called a credit default swap, which was basically sold as an insurance policy on these mortgage bundles. This created a totally false sense of safety. So when the housing market finally tanked, the insane amount of leverage built into these derivatives acted like a giant amplifier, turning what should have been big losses into a complete full-blown global meltdown.
So what's the key takeaway here? It's that the derivatives themselves weren't really the villain. They didn't cause the crisis. They were just an incredibly powerful tool. A tool that, when used recklessly by people who didn't fully grasp the risk, well, it was like throwing gasoline on a bonfire.
And that really brings us back to the main idea here. Derivatives are a true financial double-edged sword. On one edge, they are absolutely essential for our global economy. They help businesses manage risk, which makes things more stable for all of us. But the other edge is just as sharp. That same incredible power, when it's misused, can cause catastrophic damage and threaten the entire system.
Which leaves us with one final, big question to think about. Knowing their incredible power to both stabilize and destroy, how should we view them? Are derivatives an essential, unavoidable tool for modern economics? Or are they, ultimately, society's riskiest gamble?